tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are author Bruce Hulse and Magic Meat Hands director Bill Johnson. Author, model Bruce Hulse was born and raised on the East Coast. He graduated from Cornell in what kind of studies?
Asian studies with a concentration in Buddhist studies.
That's why you were so into, I didn't realize that that's what kept you going all through your modeling career. But let me go on. You took clinical psychology after that
Yes.
at another university.
Yep.
And your main interest was being a lifeguard at Avalon Beach. It seems like in the book we go all the way through. We're always going back to the beach.
Yes.
How big a part did that play in your life?
That's my heart and soul is at the beach, and specifically Avalon Beach. Just came back from spending a 2-week vacation there.
Is that right? Even to this day?
Even to this day, when I get my feet in the sand, and it's funny because lifeguarding, where you're sitting there and you're people would, the number one question would be, other than what's the water temperature and are there jellyfishes,
Yeah.
are you bored up there? And I'd say, the sun above, the sea below, here we are in the center of the universe. This is the most spectacular job you could have. And then all of a sudden the whistle would go off and you have to jump off the stand and run down and save somebody. So you get to be a hero too. And it prepared me for the modeling world, where it's just like, you're sitting, and then all of a sudden, okay, we need you, let's get, and then you have to be totally focused and ready to work.
But that's why I was talking about the Asian studies. I think that really helped a lot in your psyche, didn't it? As far as getting ready and waiting, getting ready to wait.
Long-term meditator and yoga and the martial arts, and I'd always, you'd be on set and you'd a lot of waiting and a lot of just being present, and you'd be sitting there with some girl model, who's high on coke, or some guy, and they're bored and like, I want to get out of here, and I would just treat it as a discipline, like almost as a spiritual discipline. It's like, take a breath, be focused, like, oh, look at the bird flying out, just.
You would look for something like that to concentrate on? When we're talking about all of that, and we're jumping ahead of the story, but how did you become a model? That was a great story. It all revolved around Avalon Beach again. And your lifeguarding.
It did, yes, because the fact that I was a lifeguard, I had been turned down by all the modeling agencies in New York. Tom Laspina at Zoli said, you should read GQ, and like I should study GQ and somehow morph myself into a male model.
But did you want to be a model? Is that how it started? No, you didn't. Well, then why were they telling you that? I mean, how did a photographer find you finally?
Okay, well, again, it was, I had a girlfriend who said, you could model. I was in graduate school. I thought, well, this is a great way to, like a model, you can make money. And so an agent who had turned me down, Martha North, said, well, Bruce Weber's looking for lifeguards, and sent me over to meet Bruce Weber. And I opened the door, Bruce Weber's standing there. I love you, your nose and this and that. And I didn't know what to think. Here I am, just this guy in a T-shirt and, sort of scraggly, and this most iconic and famous photographer saying that I'm going to be the next best thing, and I walked out, and he said, well, I can't book you now, but I'm going to Hawaii with Jeff Aquilon and Andy McDowell, but I would have booked you, but I'm going to book you for something. So a few months later, I get the call, I'm doing this whole issue for Lomo Vogue. We're going to be shooting on this duck farm in Long Island. And
that's what he's telling you is going to happen.
And I want to use you, and could you please, do this? And I said, I'm there. And that was
so that was your first shoot, was with Bruce Weber. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, not my first one, but
your first big one.
My first big one, and then right after that, he said, you did such a great. We had this just very in tune, this sort of almost transcendent, interplay of people. It was like my soulmate, and the way he worked with me and the way he photographed me. He said, I want you to meet a good buddy of mine. And the good buddy was Calvin Klein. I was like...
I know, Calvin Klein and Kelly Rector and Zach Carr.
Zach Carr.
Who was the artistic director, right, of Calvin Klein?
Yeah.
And so then you started doing those commercials or those ads?
I was flown over to Greece to shoot the Calvin Klein campaign in Santorini. Everybody was there, Amon, Andy McDowell, Zach. Zach was taking pictures. I fried my eyes, like staring into the sun and the bounce off the white walls. Zach was like my mom, taking care of me, putting cold compresses and taking pictures of me the whole time.
So Zach Carr passed away, but his brother George is in New York, and he's writing plays and directing theater, and he did a wonderful coffee book on Zach, with all those things that you're talking about, from the Greek islands to wherever you did those shoots.
Yeah.
But who was shooting that? Bruce?
Bruce was shooting that,
Bruce was shooting that. So then when did you get with Herb Ritz, who was another person who loved the male body?
Loved the male.
Loved the male body.
Perfect, and the male body, yes.
Both.
And he... Herb, along with Bruce, could just take such brilliant, powerful images of the male physique.
How different were they?
Bruce was more like a movie director, and he really got into your heart and soul, and he would really want your personality. And even though he was taking these still images, it was something. He wanted something from you.
Oh, he wanted to connect.
Yes.
Behind the camera.
Herb was more like a sculptor, where he had this vision, and it was just these minute movements. So you'd be I remember being in Rome with Herb for 2 weeks shooting this Gianfranco Ferré, and as much as I loved Herb, it was so hard working with it because he was so meticulous. And just move your nose 1/4 inch to the left, please. Now hold it, and look,
And they think modeling is easy.
It is easy.
No, it isn't really.
It's hard,
easy.
but any time I would be on a location, and the guys are bonding. This sucks. And here we are, and in the Canary Islands, and they're sitting in the van reading the newspaper, and I'm saying, dude, this is not difficult. Difficult is banging nails in the middle of the winter, slinging trash as a trash man. As hard as male modeling is, it's not a hard job.
So, all the stories you've been telling, I read about in Sex, Love, and Fashion, a memoir of a male model. And this is the cover with all these shots of you. And there's a lot more stories in there. But I love the way it's done. I love each chapter has a picture of you, and then it has the title. I'm going to just open it and see if we can get it. Like this, I just opened to Calvin Klein. But the way it is, it's like blocked on this side.
Yeah.
So that it draws you into that chapter. Let's see.
And that's me in Greece and Santorini.
Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, with Calvin. And
you mentioned sex. A lot of sex without love. You mentioned a lot of love.
Yeah.
You were like jumping in and out of beds all the time with all these girls.
Right.
How did you decide to really let yourself go and write those things?
There was, a lot of debate because you're thinking, this is something my children are going to read, and my wife is going to read this, and I didn't care so much about. I've always been somebody who felt like, hey, this is my life, and this is what I did, and I have nothing to be ashamed of, and
So that's how it came.
I thought if you're going to write something, I was given the opportunity to write a memoir, and you want to be truthful. You want to write about your story and your journey, and the part of my journey to find myself and happiness and heart was, going through that bed hopping stage and writing about it. So
well, the thing is, it says there's a little bit of a disclaimer talking about the memoir, because so many people go, oh, those things couldn't have happened. And what do you say at the beginning of your book?
What did I say?
You said, you want me to tell you? You said you tried to be as accurate with the conversations and things that were going on.
As much as your memory allows. Like, a lot of times these are conversations from many moons ago under the influence of certain substances, but yeah, you want to be accurate. But it's that whole thing. You're telling a story, and then even my wife, who was reading the section the other day, it didn't happen like that. What are you talking about? I said this, and you said, so everybody has their own memory.
Everybody has their own memory. That's right. So, and I think with all these memoirs now, they're so interesting, but you have to let them, people have to know that if you're not keeping a diary, you weren't keeping a diary, were you?
I was.
Oh, you were?
I was, yeah.
So they turn out to be pretty accurate. Times and places and people.
Yes, and as much as your diaries are accurate, because diary, if you ever kept a journal, depending on where you are and what you're writing about, it can, in conversations you're telling, and it's.
You're still modeling.
Yes.
You're still modeling to this day, which is probably a model's longest, I don't know how many years it is, but longest career. Would you say? Do you have one of the longest careers?
I have close to 30 years, so that's a long time. There's a few guys probably that have modeled longer than me, but maybe didn't do, like male supermodel is an oxymoron, okay? There's no such thing. If you went on the street and asked Joe,
what's a male? Who is he?
Name me 5 male models. They wouldn't be able to, other than Fabio, who's
because he became a singer, right?
Well, he's a book model,
right?
A romantic book model,
right? Right, I see.
But I've been got to work with all the best photographers, best designers, best hairstylists, all the supermodels, and I was shooting right down the street the other day for Old Navy.
Bruce Hulse is a name that we know from Sex, Love, and Fashion because you've written about it, but also now that we've seen you and we know you're an author, we'll look for you. But you're hosting something on Bravo that says male supermodel.
Yeah.
So what does that have?
I did a show, and this was a couple years ago, called Manhunt. It was a search for the next male supermodel. And I was one of the hosts with Carmen Electra and Marissa Miller, and we were out looking for the next, male supermodel.
And what would you tell a model? Because you tell me, because I know what it takes, and I don't know if everyone has that.
What would I tell a model to?
Yeah, a young model who's just starting his career.
Okay, so the main thing, that male models ask, and when we get on a job with each other, is like, what are you going to do when this is all over?
Right.
What's next? And so if you think, you're, and the careers go really quickly, so you better be thinking, how am I going to use this? What am I going to learn from this? What connections are I going to, am I going to make? I have had friends, male model friends, that have become, restaurateurs, photographers, agents, actors, and so use it as a vehicle. It's not. It's
a
rare.
Stepping stone.
A stepping stone. It's rare that you're going to have somebody like myself that lasts 30 years. But we call ourselves now the Silverbacks. Myself and my friend, my French counterpart, Bernard Fouquet. He's the French silverback. I'm the American silverback. We have survived.
And here you are.
And here we are.
Has he written his memoir yet?
I'm telling you, he has to do the French version. He has a more interesting story than he's bedded more women, had more parties, and a crazier life than even me. So.
And now we're going to wait for the movie. Woo!
There's already been talk. So
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce, a lot. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with Bill Johnson. someone. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profile. Our guest, teacher, director, performer, Bill Johnson, was born in Fairfax, Virginia, and graduated from James Madison University with a bachelor's in media arts and theater. Bill, you studied improv with the greats, the top of the line, people like Gary Austin. Tell us about this.
Well, Gary Austin is actually the original director of the Groundlings, which is like the premier comedy theater in Los Angeles, and I studied with Gary after he was just doing his own teaching around the country, and I'd already known improv. I already did some improv before, but I got a chance to work with him and learn more.
When you were at school, at Media Arts and Theater, what were you planning to do? Were you going to be an actor?
Well, no, I was more focused on writing and directing.
Oh, you were? You
yeah.
wanted to direct?
Yes.
I see.
So I directed in the theater department there, and I did perform, and I acted in the theater department. But one of the most powerful experiences I had in college was the improv group that I was a part of at the time called Cilia.
In college?
In Virginia.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that unusual for in a theater department to have an improv group?
Well, it wasn't associated directly with the theater department. It was actually, most of the people who are in the group were either current students or alumni, but but it was really more based in the surrounding city, and I found it to be very helpful in learning about the theater. I spent 2 years with that group and did a number of performances and rehearsed with them weekly.
Do you think improv brings a different kind of directing quality to your life?
Absolutely.
You need to know that, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, as a director, you mean as an art theater director? Absolutely. Because I think that when you're an improviser, you become comfortable and you learn how to thrive in constantly changing environment and also constantly making new decisions and new choices.
So we were talking about the people you studied with Stan Wells, who was what, Empty Stage?
Yeah, Stan Wells founded the Empty Stage Theater, and he also has a background with the Groundlings as well over the course of it. Not during Gary Austin's time, which was in the 70s when Gary was there and founded it and started the Groundlings going. But I'm not sure what time frame Stan was there, but he's taught all around. But then he started his own theater and developed his own forms.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Yeah. Each one of them has a different. So far we've talked about Gary and Stan. They have different ways of teaching.
Absolutely. Yeah, different directors, different different folks. They have different approaches. Gary does a lot with long form, and so did Stan. Really focus on long form as well.
Okay, let's stop because tell us what improv is.
Okay.
And then we're going to get to, I love that name, Magic Meatheads.
Okay.
Meatheads.
Hands.
I know, but I keep saying meatheads.
That's right. A lot of people do. They're like, meat hands, meatheads,
meatheads. And magic. I thought you were a magician.
Yes, and people think that first time we did a show for kids, they all thought a magic show was coming. And we're like, already started off on a bad foot because they're all like waiting for us to pull bunnies out of a hat.
With me. Okay, start. Improvisation.
Improvisation is the art, in terms of the theater, improvisation is just the art of acting without a script, is really, in my view, what it is.
But you have to make it up yourself, right?
Absolutely. The art of it is you don't have a writer telling you what to say, or a director who prepared you telling you what to do. You are on the fly, coming up with the material, creating the characters, creating the scenes, in either a game-like short format or even in long form where scenes follow scenes follow scenes, where you can tell a story. Yeah, and there's a lot of. I actually worked with a gentleman named Billy Steinkellner.
I was going to ask about him next. He did Cheers.
Yeah, he was a writer and producer for Cheers, and he also has a background with Second City and the Groundlings. He's been around for a while. Great director, great writer. And just a really good teacher, and I've gotten a chance to work with him recently, and in his class I got a chance to work with a lot of veterans who are well-known actors and well-known directors. And
so even when they're well-known actors and acting and have scripts and all that, they still like to come to improv? Sure.
I mean, especially for those where that's their roots. I got a chance to meet and work with Lisa Kudrow in a class with Billy Steinkellner, and who obviously has worked with one of the great sitcoms with Friends, and still, she's been improvising for a long time, and that's her roots as well. So
one thing you just said was long term. I think you explained long form. Yep. I think you just explained it. It must go on act after act after act?
Yeah.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, well, it's just anything. Generally, long form refers to any type of situation or scenario that continues for over the course of several scenes.
But how many can different people be involved?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's usually done. Improv is almost always done in a team setting, either if it's a small team setting like 4 or 5 people, or whether or not it's 10 or 12 can do a long form scenario or a thing.
So you've told us a little bit about these top teachers that you've worked with, but you teach as well.
I do teach as well. Yeah, I really like to work with.
And did you bring everything that they had and put your own thing together?
Well, yeah, I think, just like any time, I worked with some really great teachers that inspired me to teach, and I think, a lot of people come at improvisation or improv comedy from different perspectives. Some from more of a comedy perspective, and I come from a dramatic directing theater.
I was going to ask you, because you've directed heavy-duty drama.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
But you've come out of that then, or do you still do it?
Well, I haven't done. I actually recently directed a festival of original one-act plays where there were some dramas involved. So I still do keep my hands in drama as well.
Yeah, because we're talking about scripted. The classics is what you've done, what you've directed, as opposed to unscripted people standing on stage talking.
Right.
You work in a group. When you work together so much, do you know what that other person's going to do? Are you anticipating what they're going to say?
To some degree. I mean, when you work in a group for a long time, and you do learn what each person's nuances are, what their instincts are, and that's part of the fun of working in the context of a team. Improvisation comedy through improv, different from stand-up comedy, is that stand-up comedy is very singular, very individual, whereas improv is about people collaborating, making each other look good, and helping to set each other up for opportunities.
I see. Oh, so they do work together.
Very much.
So you get your material from whom? The audience or the community, or?
Well, the audience helps to give us information, little ideas to kind of spring off of. It also helps to show the audience that we're really making this up. We didn't come up with something in the back room.
Oh, I see.
We don't have a bit back here. We're actually, you tell us where we're going to do this scene, so you'll know that we're going to take this. We're doing this right now on the spot in front of you.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the honesty of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
You really can't improvise without the audience suggestion, but part of the audience suggestion is getting them involved and also engaging them and saying, look, we are making this up right now.
That's interesting. You do a lot of community work with Magic Meat Hands.
Hands.
Yeah,
that's right. Meat hands, not heads. Right.
Tell us about the name and how it came about.
The Magic Meat Hands, actually, I've been teaching a training program for, I'm in a 5th year of teaching, and this training program that I started when I was at the Empty Stage. And we were I had a group of beginners who were in a classroom in the back room, and they were doing a scene, and it was set in a German sausage factory. And so we're in the middle of this scene, and we're going through all these different emotional changes, because that was the game we were playing. And then at one point, I guess anger or some very excitable emotion was given, and one player said to the other, we need this sausage or the whole German people will starve. And the person who was working in the factory was like, well, I'll use my magic meat hands and I'll save all of Germany. And it was very funny to us at the time. We thought, that's a kind of a good name, Magic Meat Hands. And we voted on that and a different one, and Meat Hands won out.
That's great.
Yeah.
You have, what's the name of the place in Culver City?
The Spot Cafe and Lounge.
Spot Cafe Lounge.
We perform
you
every week.
Perform there.
Every week.
You've performed in Long Beach and Hermosa Beach.
Yep. Victorville.
And and when you start to perform, I think you go into the community to see what's going on, so you can use that in your improv?
Well, we generally, the way we really get the audience and the community involved is a couple different ways. One, we get so many suggestions, and we even get audience members on stage to play with us.
Oh, you do?
Yes. Every show we get audience.
But isn't it scary every time you do something, you don't know what's going to happen?
Well, that's improv, right? I mean, that's part of the fun and the exploration, the exhilaration of it. So we like to get the audience involved. And a lot of games, we actually get the audience up there to play with us. But another way that we get the audience, the communities involved, is we do tag team comedy, in which case we'll actually work with a local group, have them perform as part of the show. So in the case of Hermosa Beach, there's a group called Jumpstart that performs in the South Bay every month in Lomita. and I know the director of that group, and so we said, let's do a family-friendly night and perform. They'll do the first act, and we'll do the second act.
Oh, really?
And then we actually, so that we can combine forces, and then we do a show. We do the same thing in Victorville. We actually did a group called the High Desert Rats. Did the same thing. They did the first act, and we did the second act.
But they have a following in their community, so
Right.
you come in and you create a new kind of act for them, right?
Right. So we actually help to kind of create to work with them to create a whole night of theater to kind of complete something. And so it kind of helps to collaborate and empower a local group to perform and entertain people within the community they're a part of already.
So could this Improv be a reality TV show?
Well, I think that a reality TV show about improvisers, it could be.
Like following you around to these things?
I think it would be pretty interesting to watch a group of improvisers and how they warm up sometimes in alleyways and try to figure out if they have, do I have enough time to go to the bathroom before I run on stage and come up with it? There's so much wacky stuff that happens in the backstage when the improvisers are getting ready to go on.
What about costuming and music and lighting and stuff like that?
Well, what's interesting about that is that we don't have those things in improv generally. I mean, sketch artists and plays, like a sketch comedy group or a theater group doing a play, they have costumes and sets and props.
Oh, that's the difference with sketch? That's what I was going to ask you.
Sketch is scripted, and so since they're being scripted, they can costume to their script. But we don't know if we're going to play a scene in Russia or if we're going to play a scene in Mississippi. So we can't.
But if you're going to play a scene in Russia, do you try to find something in the restaurant or the lounge or in the theater that you're going to, like a babushka or something?
We won't, not at all.
No?
We just completely come in and are just street clothes, and just kind of, if we have something really big on our head, we just hold it there like it's there, just kind of do the whole scene with our hand on our head. Like, I remember one guy who used to improvise, and he would sometimes he would play an animal, and every animal he would ever play kind of leaned over like this. This was his rhino. This was his giraffe. This was his cougar. It all looked like this.
We got you.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And the Spot Cafe weekly in Culver
Thursday
City.
night, and September 19th we open a production of All in the Timing by David Ives. We're actually going to do plays and some improv every night, several different nights starting in Victorville on September 19th. Check out our website.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And send me your emails, jaquinn1@aol.com. Bye.